All right, it's week 9, your whiteboard segment, and I guess we're going with X's and HOGE'S. How did we not have that for the first 2 months of the season? No idea. Can only imagine what Carm's doing with that. Time to get into this. What I believe should be a get-right week for the Bears offense, and I will explain. Noon game, CBS did not go well for the Bears last week, but the Bears are a 3-point favorite this time around. Over-under pretty high probably because of the Bengals defense, mostly. 51.5 points is the over-under. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes over. Bengals coming in at 3-5. They had a must-win game last week that they did not come through against the New York Jets, allowing Justin Fields and the Jets to get their first win of the season, 39-38, as the Bengals blew that one. Zach Taylor's their head coach. You know him. He's in his 6th season already, a record of 49-57. And one, of course, that's heavily weighted down by the first 2 years before they got Joe Burrow. It's 4 straight winning seasons since then. Dan Pitcher's his 2nd year OC, but he's been with the Bengals for 10 years now. Al Golden, familiar name in college football, former Temple and Miami head coach, who's been kind of bouncing around the NFL in recent years. He's in his 1st year as defensive coordinators. They let go of Lou Anarumo at the end of last season. He's, of course, the Colts DC this year. Things going pretty well over there. Darren Simmons is the special teams coordinator, and he has been there. He's been their STC since 2003. Been there a long time, but he's only 52 years old, so he started young. He's had the assistant head coaching title, too, since Zach Taylor became the head coach. Evan McPherson's their kicker. He's got a huge leg. At Lambeau a couple weeks ago, he had a chance to kick the NFL record and made it before they called timeout. And then when they came back out of the timeout, he was way short. So he's got a big leg. You always got to be aware of that. In terms of the EPA per play in this matchup, you're going to see a lot of red for the Bengals. Okay, 23rd offensively, 31st defensively. The Bears continue to sort of be in the middle of the road, 19th actually, both EPA per play when it comes to defense and offense. We'll start with this Bears offensive matchup. And in this game, there's a lot of injuries to sort of juggle here as we record this on Thursday. So we don't have a ton of information on these guys, but I'm going to assume for the most part with the Bears that all these guys circled in red, and there's a lot of them, basically all the skill positions. DJ Moore, Cole Kmet might be back this week after missing last week. DeAndre Swift dealing with the groin. Olamide Zaccheaus, he got nicked up in the game last week. Rome Odunze's dealing with a heel injury. Luther Burden with a concussion. Luther's the one guy that, sitting here on Thursday, I'd be concerned misses this game. It seems like concussions at this point have been pretty much you get one, you miss a week. But the rest of these guys, I don't know. I guess I'd be surprised if any of them actually miss the game. Maybe keep an eye on DeAndre Swift a little bit there. Trey Hendrickson's the big injury, of course, on this side of the ball for the Bengals defense. He's been dealing with a hip injury, re-aggravated it last week, and if he misses it, boy, this could be a mess defensively for the Bengals because they really need him. Even with him, it's not that great of a unit. I should have also mentioned that the three additions in the offseason for the Bengals, 2 of them on defense. All 3 of these guys, former Packers. You might remember TJ Slayton in at defensive tackle, Oren Burks as a backup linebacker, but they have 2 rookies that they start right now at linebacker, and Lucas Patrick, our old friend, is a backup on the offensive line for the Bengals. They lost Alex Kappa and Sheldon Rankins in the offseason. But as we go into this, I just want to do a quick update on the Bears' offensive identity as it stands kind of the midpoint of the season. So a lot of these things we expected with Ben Johnson have come to fruition. Okay, motion, they use motion about half the time, right? 18th, that ranks 18th in the league. Play action, though, 3rd most in the league. Under center, 6th most in the league. So that shows you that Caleb Williams has kind of picked up to that. That's a really good thing. They're 12 personnel, 11th, although that's been slipping. They've been using more 11 personnel in recent weeks, some of that matchup related. So this is kind of where we expected it. Before we get into these last 2 categories, just take a look at how the Bengals fare against all this stuff. So against play action, they're 22nd defensively. Again, under center, they're 30th. When they go up against 12 personnel, they're dead last in the league. So maybe we'll see more 2 tight ends this week, especially if Cole Kmet comes back, put him next to Colson Loveland. All of this, to me, works in the Bears' favor this week is really what I'm getting at. And even when you get a little bit more into it, Bears are facing blitzes, the 8th most in the league, and Caleb Williams is handling it well. They're 9th in EPA against the blitz. when defenses go single high against the Bears, which they're doing at the 4th highest rate in the league, the Bears' EPA is 6th. So they're having a lot of success, and that probably correlates with the numbers you probably heard about and read about with Caleb being better against man defense and zone at this point. But look at the blitz. Now, the Bengals don't blitz a lot. When they do, they're dead last in the league. They do go single high most of the time, and they're 30th in the league. So we'll see how that all works out, but there's a lot here in the Bears' favor this week. And really, you just see, this is not a good Bengals defense. So if we're talking Sunday afternoon, Monday morning about how the Bears' offense struggled again, that would be very, very concerning. But I think this is a get-right week for the Bears offense. All right, let's move over to the other side of the ball. We got the Bengals offense against the Bears defense. They really miss Joe Burrow. Obviously, that's not exactly a hot take, but it is interesting. They're 27th in EPA per drop back. Running the ball, though, they've been pretty solid. They're 2nd in the league in EPA per rush. Now, you look at the numbers, though. They like to run the ball inside, especially with Chase Brown. They got Samaje Perine back on the Bengals now, too. They like to run it inside. They run it inside more than any other team in the league, and outside they do it, I think, 31st in the league. So this is going to be mostly putting the stress on these defensive tackles like Gervon Dexter, Andrew Billings. Now keep an eye on this guy. Grady Jarrett returned last week. Billings and Dexter played more, but Jarrett was still over half the snaps. And one thing you might not have noticed on the injury report yesterday, Grady Jarrett wasn't even listed on the injury report yesterday. So that's a good sign as he's been dealing with that knee injury that he might be back closer to full strength at this point. Of course, most of the storyline with the Bears defense this week, and understandably so, has to do with these cornerbacks. Here's your new guy, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, just signed and expected to play in the slot corner position this week. A big boost over what the Bears had going last week in Baltimore. And back on the board is Tyrique Stevenson. We can't rule him out at this point. Much more optimistic about him playing this week. He was limited in practice on Wednesday. We'll see how that continues to go as he comes back from that shoulder. But they badly need him. And if they're running this out there, with Nashawn Wright, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Tyrique Stevenson, that's much different than what they had against the Ravens last week, which is really, really good. Now, we take a look at this offense for the Bengals. I don't need to tell you this, but Jamar Chase, one of the best to do it. And before Joe Flacco got there, Jake Browning was really struggling getting the ball to Jamar Chase. Flacco shows up, Lambeau Field a few weeks ago. I'm throwing it to number one. Krista behind the camera right here is Jamar Chase on their fantasy team. She was very happy about that. T. Higgins as well, that 1-2 punch. This is really hard to stop. So getting these corners in a much better spot this week, I think you feel better about it. Another thing I should have mentioned too, when C.J. Gardner-Johnson was with Dennis Allen, Dennis had in New Orleans, he had him blitz a lot. So keep an eye on that. They really missed that presence from Kyler Gordon last week when they didn't have that element. I think that's a big reason why they signed him. So keep an eye on that this week. Flacco obviously can't move. Meanwhile, Flacco might not even play because he's dealing with his own shoulder injury. It's his throwing shoulder. And man, if he doesn't go, based on what we saw in film earlier this season with Jake Browning, which is a little weird. Browning's done a good job in the past filling in for Joe Burrow, but for whatever reason, this offense was not working with Jake Browning. He was really struggling to get the ball to Jamar Chase. So that would obviously work in the Bears' favor quite a bit. Overall, though, I think you got to like these matchups on both sides of the ball. I think it is a different story if Flacco plays. I feel much better about defending this guy. Now that they've added C.J. Gardner-Johnson, there's a chance Tyrique Stevenson can come back this week. Earlier in the week, I was really worried about it. Now, that being said, don't be surprised if Chase still goes off. He's a really, really good player. But I think that's going to have a lot to do with the quarterback situation and whether or not Joe Flacco plays. Let's see. This should be a good one for the Bears. They should get back on track offensively. I'm optimistic about the matchup once I went through all this and watched a lot of the film. Bears need this win. Can't lose to the Bengals without Joe Burrow at this point. We'll see how it goes on Sunday.